Hello, family. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited to be here with you on today. My team and I have been planning for this for weeks and excited to welcome you to my very first annual Transformation Experience 2020. So if you're here with me today, I want you to go ahead and put your name in the chat box. Tell me where you are logging in from so that we can give you some love. I see right here, Gwendolyn Milo Butler, right from Victorville, California. Welcome, Gwen. Thank you for coming. And you may say, what in the world? What are you talking about today, Miss Kenesha? Why are you here? Well, this word transformation, when you look at the first base word, it is transform. And transform means to make a thorough change and dramatic change in character, form, or appearance. So we want to make sure that we are changing. Why? Because this year of 2020 has been a doozy. We have had pandemic upon pandemic upon pandemic. So we want to make sure that we know how to pivot, right? We know how to pivot. We know how to change whenever disaster strikes. So let's see who else is coming in. Oh my gosh, I see my brother from Texas, Mr. Leonard. Thank you for coming. I see Ms. Zanaba Queen from San Bernardino. Welcome, my friend. Thank you for tuning in. I see Miss Sonia Robinson. Welcome, my dear, dear friend Sonia. Ann Wilson from Apple Valley. Welcome to Ann. And guys, listen, I see Twan. Oh my gosh, this guy is one of my mentors. I'm excited to have you. So guys, we are in for a treat. We have a panel of top level, top-notch leaders from around this country. I mean, I look up to them. And when I asked them to be on, here's a secret. I was surprised they all said yes. They all said yes. So we're in for a treat. So again, if you're here, give me a shout out in the chat box. Put your name. Tell me where you're coming from. I see Abraham says, hey, I see you there, my friend. I see my mom, my sweet, loving mom from Louisiana. Welcome, mama. Good to have you. Latoya McGee, Johnny, my good friend Johnny. Let me tell you something about Johnny Simmons. Friends, she just joined the John Maxwell team. That's right. She was in two of my masterminds and got set on fire and decided she needed to hear from the mother load, which is we call him Dr. John C. Maxwell, but on the team, we call him Papa John. So family, without further ado, we're going to jump in again. I see my friend Jackie. Hey, Jay Miracle. And let me tell you something about Jackie. This girl knows how to pivot when disaster strikes. She has her own testimony. And I also see there Jorge, Marisol Escalante. They're my brother and sisters from another mother, but I love them just the same. So again, Transformation Experience 2020, we're going to be talking about how can we pivot? How can we change whenever disaster strikes? And here's a twist. We're not just talking about COVID-19. Drop the mic. We're not just talking about racial crises. We're not just going to be talking about civil unrest or the political mess that we're in, because disaster was striking lives well before 2020. So these words, these affirmations, these principles that my friends and I are going to give to you, they're going to be life principles. Trust me, lean in. It's going to be worth it. Listen, turn off everything else. Lean into this content, because your life is not going to be the same. So without further ado, my very first panel member, oh my gosh, this guy is a genius. It's Mike McCatherine. I had the pleasure and the honor of being on a mastermind facilitator team with him in the John Maxwell community back in October. And he's a cool cat. When I tell you he's smooth, but he's changing lives. You want to know why? Because Mike knows how to pivot. So we're going to go ahead and show Mike's bio, and then the next person that you'll see will be Mike McCatherine. After he's done, I'm going to come back to you, and Mike and I will engage, and then we're going to go right to our next speaker. All right, guys, we'll see you in a second.
Michael McCatherine is the president and owner of McCatherine Enterprise and Consultants, a leading business coach, mentor, and transformational leader to entrepreneurs and business owners. His proven and highly acclaimed methods have helped small business owners in both profit and nonprofit sectors accomplish extraordinary growth in their business and personal lives. Michael works as a certified behavioral disc analysis consultant with business owners, entrepreneurs, and teams. Mr. McCathern, a certified executive director with the John Maxwell team, has been trained by the best in the world as an internationally acclaimed expert in professional coaching. He is regarded as one of the most talented advisors in the field. His ability to translate complex issues into simple, easy-to-apply steps has made him one of the most highly sought-after mentors in the self-improvement industry. Mr. McCathern also serves on the Presidential Advisory Council and John Maxwell Touch Committee. Most recently, he has become a licensed owner teaching diversity and inclusion training. Mr. McCathern is also an expert in design, network, and service entrance building telecommunications engineer with more than 20 years of experience. This includes responsibilities in executive leadership, engineering, operations, mergers and acquisitions, human capital, business developments, and startups. Mr. McCathern has been married to his lovely wife, Wendy, for 21 years, and together they have 2 daughters, Victoria and Madison. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Michael McCathern.
All right. Have you ever heard you'll never have nothing, you'll never be nothing, and you'll never do nothing? You see, everything worthwhile is uphill. I remember a young man about 20 plus years ago that faced so much adversity, he had no clue what to do. He was around the wrong people a lot of the times. He was just trying to fit in, to the point where it landed him in a lot of trouble. Before that, that young man was doing great in school, was in college studying criminal justice, was on a path to be a well-educated criminal law and going to some education in advanced engineering. But guess what happened? That young man was at the wrong place at the wrong time and faced 15 years in prison. He was facing that. 15 years. Guess what? That young man was me. You see, early on in my career, nobody told me that, Mike, there's some people that you probably should not hang around because disaster strikes. When you're with the wrong people and you're trying to fit in, you want to know who you are, whose you are. You see, early in my career, I was in college taking night classes. That's right. It was me. Going to school for criminal justice, constitutional law, criminal law, taking all the classes. My desire at the time was to be a trooper. But at the wrong time, at the right place at the wrong time, I was with a guy who was always been in trouble because I was trying to fit in. And he got in a lot of trouble, and so did I. At the time, I was facing 15 years in prison. It's a crisis. I was trying to save my name because I've never been in trouble in my life. I lost everything that I had. Everything that I had. I lost my job. Not only did I lose my job, I almost lost my apartment. So I had, at the time when I was working in the hospital, I lost that job too. Because of, how many people know the law of associations? At the time, I had everything that I thought going for me. And it fell apart with one decision, trying to fit in. You see, I didn't call my mom at the time because I was too embarrassed. Yes, they took us to jail. And I spent a weekend plus there. Until I got out, my bond was probably $100,000 just to get out and to clear my name. I got a job at a mill at the time because I had nothing else to do. One thing I did immediately, I changed my major because I didn't want anything else to do with criminal law at that time. You see, the guy that arrested us hated me. He said, "Where do you work?" I had a beeper. I'm probably telling my age, but everybody knows what a beeper is, right? Everybody knows a beeper is something when somebody call it, a number come across. As a radiology assistant at the time, that's what a beeper was. I had a beeper. But that guy said, "You don't work for the hospital. You don't work in anything. You're just like everybody else, and I'm taking you down." And that stuck. And try to take me down, he did. So when he called the hospital and said, we just got Mike McCatherine, it was in disbelief because I had sponsors. I had everything going for me. And it fell apart. They said it can't be the Mike McCatherine we know. Because he said, you're just like everybody else. You see, disaster strikes in a moment. So, well, I'm not going to leave a cliffhanger there. I'm not going to leave you hanging on what happened next. When I got a job at the mill, doing everything I can. So I changed my major to engineering. There was a guy by the name of Vern. He was probably an older gentleman, and I was still studying. He walked up to me one day and said, what's your name, sir? I said, my name is Mike McCatherine. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I was wrong place at the wrong time. And it landed me here. He said, you shouldn't be here. I'm getting ready to retire. And just by talking to you, I realized you've got a bright future on your life. You know, at the time, I couldn't see what other people saw in me. You know what John says? Sometimes you can't see the picture because you're in the frame. Yeah, that was me. I couldn't see what others saw in me because I was too busy being in the frame. I left that job at the time because I saw an ad in the paper. It says hiring engineering. So I go and apply for a position. I looked up and it said buyer's engineering. So I walked in and applied for the job. The lady gave me a look and said, why are you here? I said, well, I noticed that on the paper, you guys are hiring, and I'm currently in the engineering field. I'm studying engineering now. She said, no, you probably need a plumbing office next door. I walked out, looked across the parking lot at the plumbing office, and I walked back in and said, you know what? This is the engineering's position, right? She said, yes. I said, well, I'd like to get an application. She gave me an application and said, you can come back. The application was this thick. I said, no, I'll take it right here. I took the test, handed it in, and walked out. Carried on about my day. But you know what? There's always an answer. The guy called me back 2 weeks later. It was a guy that was managing a company at the time and said, hey, Miss McCatherine, I want to talk to you about your test that you took. I said, yes. I was all excited. You know, that's what he said. He said, well, you only missed one question on the test. Of course, I was pretty easy for me, but I said, you know what? I missed question number 6, and it was the flywheel. And I gave him the right answer. He said, well, so you was thinking about the test. I said, absolutely. He said, well, I love to offer you a position. And I said, wait a minute. Let me stop you right there. I'm currently facing 15 years in prison trying to clear my name. He said, well, he put the paper down and said, why is that? I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. I had nothing to do with it. I'm just trying to clear my name. He leaned back in his seat and said, Mr. McCatherine, everything that you told me today, if I don't hire you, it's not because of what you just told me. But why are you telling me this? I said, well, there's some things that happened. I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Told him everything that happened. And he said, you know what? Because of your honesty, and if I don't hire you, would that be okay? I said, yeah. But I just want you to know you're hearing it from me first. I've lost everything I had. And the last thing I would want for you to do is hear it from secondhand and not from me because, hey, I'm trying to clear my name. And I have to drive back and forth to South Carolina to go to court when those things happen so I can be okay. He said, you got it. Have a nice day. I walked out somewhat defeated, but I felt good because I gave them everything that I know, because we know when things happen, some things we can't control. But what I could control is how I responded. Guess what? I got the call. I got a call 2 weeks later and was hired by that manager. And when I had to go and try to clear my name, he was okay with that because I had told him up front what would happen. You know what? That was in 1995. In 1995, 25 years ago today, my name was cleared because I missed a court date. I had several court dates. The guy name was not even Eddie. Can't even tell you his name. My name was cleared, completely cleared. Never been in trouble at all. This guy kept getting in trouble. But you know what happened? My life changed. I knew at the time there's some people that believe in you even when disaster strikes. You see, John says, allow adversity to help you discover who you are. I allowed that moment in my life to find out who I am and who I'm not. I realized at the time, if you continue on a path of being with people, this is where you may end up. Or you could pivot and change and become the person that you want to be. Let me tell you, it didn't take me long to realize you have to change or you would end up where you're going. That was just the moment of my life. And it continued to it got better from there. Landed an engineering job, got another position where I was over a different market, was able to go to Canada and with Bell Canada, open up offices. I was a young guy at the time. I'm flying to Canada, opening up office and doing training, but still has some growing to do. Still has some growing to do because I quite wasn't there yet. 1999, I was handed a book. It was the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And I've been studying John Maxwell for such a long time. Studying and reading because I knew what happened in 95. I had to invest in myself. So I dove into personal development like nobody else's business. Still going to school at night, studying engineering, had a job with the engineering firm, and just continue to dive in. Right? So one of the laws is the law of the lid. Well, sometimes we can't go any further than the lid that was on us. I felt that way. I felt like I needed more. So I continued studying. So I was inside of a transformational leadership journey for 24 months. I was asked with a team to study one law a month for 2 years. I said yes. Every month I studied a law and was able to teach a law. I studied a law and I was able to teach all and apply that in my life. That was in 1998, 99, right? I got married in 99. We had our first daughter, still growing. Was never the guy that I was then. Had our first baby. But we also know there's always diversity around the corner. But we also know what John says, talk about leading through crisis, to develop a positive life stance. And that's exactly what we were doing. Developing a positive life stance. For me, it was going from where I was and making a life to where I wanted to be and taking people along the journey. I joined men's ministries. I was leading men's ministry, giving back into the community. That's just who I was. Just adding value every single time that I could. Every single time. My answer was always yes. How can I add value? Because people added value to me. Having our first baby and then our second baby, great pregnancy. Hey, I was a proud dad. But who knew? Inside of the second pregnancy, my wife was feeling hot. We called the nurse inside, and the nurse said, "How are you feeling?" My wife said, I don't feel good. The nurse ran out of the room. It's full transparency. The nurse ran back in the room with several doctors, and they said, "Do you give us all rights to save your life?" When they said life, my wife started going into shock. You see, she was bleeding out at the time. They rushed her out of the room, gave me the brand new baby, and called Cold Blue OR. Cold Blue OR. At that time, I'm facing a brand new baby. while my wife's in OR on life support. They're trying to figure out what's going on. We know adversity happens. Some things we just cannot control. The doctors and nurses came back in 4 hours later and said, Miss McCatherine, we're doing all the best to save your wife's life, but she might not make it. They started sounding like Charlie Brown to me. Wah, wah. That's what I heard. After I heard your wife may not, I didn't hear anything else. Only thing I wanted to say no is, when can I see her? They came back 4 hours after that and said, she's not breathing. She's on the machine. We had to give her a cocktail of blood just to save her life. And you won't have any more kids because we had to take everything out to save her life. She was in ICU. Keep in mind, at that time of my life, I was making a life stance, right? Trying to be the best who I can be, trying to control some things. I couldn't control that. There's nothing I can do to control that because life happens. How can I pivot to change that? Nothing I can do. But I can respond. I wanted to see her. So I pushed the baby, me and the baby going up to the ICU to see the wife. Nurses are bawling their eyes out because healthy pregnancy. And here I am looking at my wife on all these tubes. But you know what happened? They said, Miss McCatherine, you might want to think about pulling the plug. Yeah, right. Do what? We were in here to have a baby. Now you're telling me think about pulling the plug? Now, I refused to leave the hospital because I wanted to stay in the room. But there's something about when you just believe. I believed. And it's not for everybody. It's just for me. There was nothing in her bag. She had a urine bag. It was empty. Her kidney shut down. But on that third day, man, there was you ever get excited over urine? And I did. It was this much. It was this much. And her body started back working. Her body started back operating. And I will never forget at the time reading Purpose-Driven Life. You see, at the time, my wife was an executive recruiter at the time. And there was a lady that my wife hired and heard about what happened and sent me an audio cassette tape of everything that was going on and say, your wife needs a miracle. We'll be praying for your wife. I always tell people my wife lived the tragedy, but I saw the tragedy. But she was able to wake up. She woke up. And I was able to see her come back down in the main room. Her eyes was open. She was up, but she continued to get continuous IVs for 7 days. We went home. My wife walked out of the hospital. I'm telling you, she walked out of the hospital and it's like it never happened. She's cut from hip to hip, but it's like it never happened. So, Mike, why do you add value to people the way that you do? Because I know what it's like when people need you. I know what it's like to add value to people at another level, to say yes, saying yes. And if you look at my wife now, you look at our life now, people say you have always had it made. Nothing happens to you. There's a lot of things that happen. We know that tragedy happens. And John gives 11 perspective principles about crisis. There's 11 of them. But let me give you a few. John told, the one I read was develop a positive life stance. And that's one that I developed. I wanted to be different than who I was. Always growing and adding value, right? Feed your faith. I'm a man of faith. Everything around what we have is God is in the center for me. That's just who I am. I'm a man of faith. So if you hear reference God, that's just part of who I am. It says, feed your faith to starve your fears. You see, growing up as a young man, I had zero fear. But I realized by having zero fear, what may put you. But I also realized that I fed my faith and starved my fears where it could always put you. But going back to the wife, I got a healthy girls, and I'm adding value to people where we sit. Our life is not perfect, but we're always adding value to people at another level. You see, in 2018, I joined the John Maxwell team. After studying John content for years, I was blessed to join the team. I was blessed to add value to people at another level. I was blessed to be able to take businesses and pour into businesses and help them grow their business, help them feed their faith and starve their fear. Take them to nothing that I'm doing, just giving back what was given to me. That's what it's about. Being certified at the John Maxwell team and being certified in the DIS level where I can add value to people, being employed with a company that paid me every single day when my wife was going through what she went through. I quit my job, people. They said, don't worry about it, and paid me every single day. I probably can leave my job today, but I'm there to add value. We've had a great journey, but the journey is getting started, because when things happen, and I'm going to close with this. When things happen and we need to pivot, let's feed our faith and starve our fears, because, there's reflect instead of react in adversity. So as we reflect instead of react, adversity will come, but we can control how we respond. Thank you.
All right. Whoa, Mike McCatherine. Wow. What a powerful story. I mean, you had me at hello. When you opened your mouth and began to describe this young man that was facing adversity, and then to hear you walk the story up to where you are today. And I know you could have still gone, but I'm very honored to be able to, again, share the floor with someone so powerful that believes in adding value, that it's not just about a job, right?
That's right.
This is who you are.
Who I am.
Because it's what somebody else was for you.
Absolutely.
Excellent, Mike. Thank you so much, Mike. I'm going to go ahead and put you in the queue. Do not leave me, because we are going to have you come back at the end. Guys, if you are excited, I want you to put in the chat box. Put in the chat box, what was the one point, the biggest point that you remembered from Mike's story? Because it was powerful. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to our next speaker. She is wonderful. Her name is Tina E. Grimes. She's been in the game far longer than what she looks like, because she looks great, but she's been in the game for a long time. So we're going to bring up Tina E. Grimes' bio, and then she'll be the next person that you hear.
Tina E. Grimes, CEO of Tina Enterprises, is an international speaker, coach, and trainer, certified at the highest executive director, club owner level with the John Maxwell team. For over 25 years, she has coached and trained thousands of individuals and corporations. Tina is an innovative, multi-talented leader with a proven track record of assuring client success. She excels at organizational, culture building, leading change management, and improving teams through communications, coaching. She also supports organizations in developing a diversity and inclusion strategic plan and leads senior leadership and the entire organization through the training process. She is an accomplished writer and published author of several articles, essays, and a book. A fundraiser extraordinaire, Tina led the capital campaign, securing over $32 million to build Cardinal Ritter College Prep High School in St. Louis, Missouri. She was inducted into the inaugural Cardinal Ritter College Prep Hall of Fame in 2019 for her international leadership success. She is an adjunct professor at Harris Stowe State University and serves on the board of directors for Lafayette Preparatory Academy and for SIS Inc. Tina has received numerous other awards and recognition, including the inaugural Woman of Distinction Award for Inspiration from the Girl Scout Council of Eastern Missouri. She has coached and trained in Paraguay most recently and earned the highest honor of being selected as a main stage speaker at the most prestigious International Maxwell Certification Conference. In August 2020, out of 35,000 coaches in 160 countries, Tina won the John Maxwell Team JMTDNA Culture Award for exceeding expectations. Tina graduated from Cardinal Ritter College Prep High School. She went on to receive a Bachelor of Business Administration and Finance and a Master of Arts, Human Service Agency Management. Tina has been married to Mark Grimes for 20 years, and together they have 2 children, Maya and Mason. Everyone, please welcome Miss Tina E. Grimes.
Pivot. Yes, I'm holding this basketball, and I know a little bit about this game. That's something that wasn't in my bio, but I still have a mean jump shot. Pivot means a movement in which a player holding the ball moves in any direction, keeping one foot planted securely while they're looking around for their options. When disaster strikes, my friend, I always go to my basketball analogy and remember my basketball days. And I always tell myself, Tina, girl, you have to know how to pivot. I love to remember things in acrostics, and I'm going to share my pivot with you today. And I'm going to do it in that way so that as you're going through the rest of the week, you'll say, I remember what she said and what she meant when she talked to us about pivot. The P in pivot, as I talk about it, I'm a high I personality, so I can't limit myself always to one word. When I think about that P in pivot, I'm talking about perspective, posture, and people. What about perspective? I like to travel. I've been traveling back and forth from St. Louis to Louisiana, and I did hear there's some Louisiana folks on here today. My parents are from Louisiana, so all of my life, I've been on the plane, earning my wings, even as a little child, traveling by myself back and forth from St. Louis to Louisiana. I get clarity when I'm 30,000 feet above the ground. And when I think about pivot, I think about perspective, and I think about that 30,000 foot view. As I am pivoting and as I am going through any disaster, what I'm encouraging you to do, my friends, is to view that disaster from a 30,000 foot perspective. What do you mean by that, girl? Telling us to look at our problems from a 30,000 view perspective. If you're ever in a plane or you're at that height, when you look down, your problems just don't look as great anymore as they did when you saw them at eye level. So as you're going through any disaster or you're going through any crisis, start to remember 30,000 foot view, 30,000 foot view, and have that airplane view of your problems, knowing that if you pivot, you're going to come out all right. That other P I talked about is people. As you are in disaster, it's very important that you assess your circle of influence. Who's around you? The people matter. When I'm going through a disaster, I don't need people around me who are speaking death. I don't need people around me who are speaking despair. I need people, and you need people who are speaking hope to you, who are giving you the things that you need so that you can live and so that you can continue to move from that place, that disastrous place you're in, to move to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So your people are very important, and your posture and how you go through is also really important. Now, do we move outside of reality? I'm not saying we move outside of reality, but when we have that right perspective and the right people around us, we can walk with the right posture. My grandmother, Elmer Bazil Thomas, had a nickname for me from a child. She called me my lady from New York. Now, in Bayagula in White Castle, Louisiana, I didn't really know. I hadn't been to New York. But the way my grandmother said it, I knew as a kid that there had to be something about a lady from New York, because when she said it, her posture would change. So when you're going through a disaster, adjust your posture. Adjust your posture because it matters. How you're moving through the disaster, how you're walking through the disaster matters. So people, perspective, and posture. When I think about this I in pivot, I'm thinking about information and insight. When you're in the midst of a disaster, you have to assess, what information do I need? What information do I already have? What information is going to help me to get from where I am to where I need to go? You need to be very introspective and say, what is it that I need to do to recreate, to rebrand, or to restructure? Did you get those? To recreate, to rebrand, or to restructure. Now, some of you all are listening and saying, well, I'm not in business. It doesn't matter if you're in business or not. You yourself are a brand. So when you're trying to move out of a place of disaster, you want to ask yourself, how do I need to recreate? What might I need to do differently than I'm doing right now? How might I need to rebrand so that people can see me in a different light, so that as I'm moving from this place of despair to this place of hope and moving into the thing that I know I will look back on that disaster and laugh about, then what is that I need to do to restructure or rebrand? See, the thing about pivoting, again, as I showed you, is as I'm moving around, my foot is planted. Don't miss that. Now, I too, like Mike told you, I'm a person of faith. So I have to be careful when I start telling you about being planted. Because when your foot is planted and you have a solid foundation, and for me, my foundation is Christ, I know that I cannot lose. So as my foot is planted and I know who I am and I have that solid foundation, then I'm looking around with my ball in the illustration I showed you, and I'm looking at my options because I know that there are options that are before me. When I think about that V in pivot, I'm thinking about my vision. When you're in disaster, continually revisit your vision. Now, you may say vision, yes, your vision and your purpose, because in disaster, your vision will keep you alive. Did you get that? Because some of you all right now are in positions that you say, this is a disastrous position that I'm in. When you're in disaster, revisit your vision, because your vision will keep you alive. Now, when I talk about vision, this is so deep for me. Vision for me means why I breathe. Take a deep breath in right where you are right now, and I'm going to do it with you. Now, exhale. Now, some of you all, that felt good to you because you have not stopped to inhale and exhale in a very long time in the midst of your disastrous situation. But if you breathed in and God gave you the ability to breathe out, which if you're still hearing my voice, that means you're still alive, then there's vision, then there's purpose for your life. So you can't allow the disaster to take you out. You have to revisit the vision and say, why do I breathe? Why am I alive? Why is it that I am still able to continue to go through this disaster? And when you realize that you still have breath in your body, that should give you enough hope and encouragement to stay the course and to not give up. Now, I'm not just telling you about something I heard about. I'm telling you about something that I know. People look at different things and they hear bios and don't necessarily realize what one has gone through in life. One of the disasters in my life where I really had to learn to pivot was at age 23 years old. And believe it or not, that was 27 years ago. Do the math. This is a big year for me. One of those times was at 23 years old. And at 23 years old, my mother, my very best friend, my cheerleader, the person who got behind me when I started my very first business and said, baby, what is it that we need to do? At 23 years old, I just graduated, received my undergraduate degree. I was working at a company that I was just showing up day to day while I was trying to identify my purpose. And at 23 years old, my very best friend, my supporter, my mom, was diagnosed with lung cancer. And within 60 days, she was gone. I had to make a decision, and I had to decide very quickly that I needed to pivot. The steps that I'm sharing with you today are steps that when I look back, they're the things that kept me alive. They're the things that kept me going. And they were the very things that at 23 years old that helped me clarify vision. It was a defining moment for me. It was in that moment after my mother passed away at 23 that I got crystal clear on why I breathe. I got crystal clear on why God had me and allowed me to continue to wake up every day to give me breath. And that is to be a catalyst and a connector in the lives of other people. Your vision will keep you alive. Your vision will help you stay the course. And your vision will also help you to stay opportunity focused. And that's my O. You have to be opportunity focused when disaster comes. What do you mean by opportunity focused? I know you're asking. It means that you can't have your eyes set on the disaster. You have to look around in that pivot scenario and you have to look for the opportunities. Often the opportunities are right in front of you. They're right in your face. But if you don't have the proper perspective, as I talked about earlier, and you're only focusing on the disaster, that does not give you the opportunity to look around and be and live opportunity focused. Stop right now, jot down what opportunities are right in front of you that you have not taken advantage of because you've been more focused on the disaster. So you have to pick yourself up. You have to look for those opportunities and you have to say to yourself, I'm not going to be disaster focused. I'm going to be opportunity focused. And that brings me to the T in pivot, which is called thrive. It's one thing in a disaster. I understand. The first thing you're trying to do is just survive. I get it. But beyond surviving in the midst of disaster, you have to position your mind and your mindset to thrive, not just to survive, but thrive. Because one thing about the disaster, when you have a proper perspective, is that you understand that where you are now, you won't be there always. You understand that what you're going through is not just for you, it's to change lives and to help people all over the world. So when you're talking about thriving, thriving is just moving beyond I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to get there. If I can just survive. Yeah, that's the first step. But after you survive, you have to thrive. Make that commitment with me today that in the midst of this disaster that you may be going through, you're not just going to survive, you're going to thrive. And the thing about disaster and the thing about perspective is that if you're not in a disaster, and this is not gloom and doom, this is life in reality, then disaster is on the horizon at some point. So when you get these principles now, then you're setting yourselves up so that you're better able to pivot and you're not thrown into a tailspin when the disaster comes. You know, you have to take the limits off when you're thriving. You have to unleash that superpower in you when you're thriving and you're not just surviving. See, it reminds me of the law of the rubber band as I'm talking about this. You know, even when I do this, some of you all, you just don't feel comfortable. John Maxwell talks about the law of the rubber band in the 21 laws of growth. And the law of the rubber band is life changing. You know, I've been talking about and doing this rubber band thing, though, since I was a kid, because some of you all had little bad boys in class when you were in grade school, and they take the rubber bands and they do this. And even if they didn't let it go, they come in the girls' faces and they start doing this. Well, this rubber band is all about stretching. It's all about resilience. It's all about identifying how is it, what's that tension? Because that tension, believe it or not, you all, it's necessary when we're talking about how we're going to pivot and how are we going to thrive and not just survive in the midst of crisis. You know, again, the thing to remember is disaster will come. You may be coming out of a disaster. You may be in the midst of a disaster, or there may be a disaster on the horizon. But if you can remember and see that illustration of keeping that foot planted while you're searching and you're having the right perspective and you're gathering the right information and you have your vision that's going to keep you alive and you're staying opportunity focused, and you're making that decision that you're not just going to survive, but thrive, your disaster will not only help you, my friends, it will also help and liberate and free someone else. I just love talking about pivoting. Thank you, thank you, thank you for allowing me to share with you today a part of my journey and my story. But don't just listen to this information. Take it and come out of your disaster thriving as you learn and continue to pivot.
Wow, Tina, excellent, guys. Let's give it up for Tina. This is wonderful. And I liked how you said at the end that either we're in a disaster, and right now I think around the world we're all currently in the same disaster, although it may manifest differently, or we just came out or we're going in. And then I wrote down, tension is necessary. We don't like that, Tina. I don't like that.
It doesn't feel good, but it's necessary.
I like that, my friend. Well, Tina, thank you so much. We're going to put you in the queue. Do not leave us. We're going to bring you and the rest of the panel back on. Guys, right now in the chat box, I want you to type in there, what is your most profound memory of what Tina just shared with us? And she dropped lots of nuggets as she did the acrostic of pivot. So now, guys, we have another speaker on the deck, Tim Novak. Wow, there's way too much I can say about Tim. Tim is on, he's the John Maxwell Executive Director. He's on calls Wednesdays and Saturdays. I have the pleasure of being on the team, and I could pick up the phone and call and listen to him teach me and encourage me. And I say me as if it's only me, but there could be hundreds of people on the call. And Tim is excellent for leaning in and providing some support. So we're going to have Tim's bio play, and then he'll be the next voice that you hear. I hope that you guys are enjoying Transformation Experience 2020.
Tim Novak has spent over 30 years leading, coaching, and mentoring individuals and teams in the area of sales and business leadership. He started his own business at the age of 22 and quickly became one of the highest performing salesmen in the organization, which ultimately led to overseeing the franchise sales and operations of over 1,700 franchises in the U.S. for a Fortune 500 organization. He launched Novak Development in 2018 to help individuals and organizations close the gap from where they are to where they want to be. He does that through teaching the John C. Maxwell methods of leadership, selling, coaching, and speaking. Over his career, he's been mentored and coached by some of the world's greatest authorities in leadership and personal development, like Zig Ziglar, Earl Nightingale, Brian Tracy, and Dick Simon. He lives out the example of what it takes to achieve your true potential, being all in, being real, and being bold. Everyone, please welcome Mr. Tim Novak.
Well done, Kanisha. Wow, those first two speakers were absolutely amazing. And it's a true honor for me to be with you today. You know, when Kanisha mentioned that she was going to host an event like this and asked me to speak, it was an automatic yes. One, because I don't know how well you know her. No is not a word that's in her vocabulary. And two, is I don't know that there's ever been a more important time in my life where pivoting as a leader was more important. So when she asked me to speak on the topic of pivoting when disaster strikes, I'm in. I'm all in. And when I say pivot, here's what I mean. As a young entrepreneur, I started my own business, as you heard, with one of today's largest U.S. franchisors and quickly became one of the fastest and highest selling representatives in the organization, so much so that they promoted me into a leadership position at the age of 26. Now, I knew how to sell, but I didn't know how to lead, and I was focused on telling my team what to do, and I started doing things for them. And what happened was it led to short-term results, frustration for me, and no change or little change in action or long-term results for them. So I got to the point where I decided I'm either going to change jobs or I'm going to go back and be an independent business owner. And I was at a crossroads. I didn't know what to do. And that's when I met John Maxwell. I bought his book, Developing the Leader Within You 1.0. And what I heard him saying to me in that book was, you could change your job. That's certainly one option. Or he said you could shift your strategy, pivot. He said, you see, it's not about you. He said, it's about you getting them to change because they want to change. It's all about influence. What I'm seeing in the businesses in the private worlds that I'm in right now is that what's been happening externally to us is affecting us internally. It's causing greater problems and stress at home. It's causing greater problems and stress at work. People are so overwhelmed with so many problems and stress. It's not like you're leading a company and this problem arises and then you've got to deal with it. It's almost every area of their business and personal life. It's problematic right now. We're over 9 months into a life of quarantining, social distancing, moving from working in an office outside of our homes, now working in the same workspace that we're raising children. We're raising kids in the same space, some doing daycare, changes to daycare. We've got kids that started school at home, then they transitioned at school, and now some are transitioning back just out of concerns about the virus. Changes to what was normal mealtime and how we do our shopping. And not to say about the people we choose to spend time with in our home, outside of our home, with a mask, without a mask, with the windows open, without the windows open. And now the holidays are problematic because we've got some kids at home that are going to be on extended stay through college. And then we've got family members that haven't seen people for months and they're trying to make decisions about should we see them, should we not see them. It's causing greater stress and problems at work with all the COVID protocols and the social distancing and the masks in the building. And do we wear them in meetings, the reduced work groups? Are we meeting with people that are in the office working or extended outside the home? So it's so easy as a human today to get overwhelmed and look at that and stay in that place with that attitude that everything is so overwhelming and that it's just this huge problem. In fact, my wife, Julie, owns a nonprofit children's theater, and doing live musicals with 80 plus kids came to an extreme halt 9 months ago with no changes within sight. And she says, it's like I'm in this boat rowing across a foggy lake, and I know there's another side, but I can't see it. And I'm rowing and I'm rowing. And I get to a point where I just want to put the oar down and float. COVID is causing a ripple effect in every single area. And so the problems are so multiplied that it's bigger than just saying, yeah, I'm going to do this as a leader. We have to get out of that thinking that all these things are unsolvable and that the problems are overwhelming. Because if we can do that, and we can see the problems as a challenge for us to become better leaders and better people, then we can get rid of that attitude that's stifling us maybe from making decisions or being creative. So how should we lead and manage effectively to see the problems that we face, that we know about today, and the ones that we're going to face after this training today that are going to show up? How do we approach those effectively and see them as growth opportunities and maybe stepping stones to the next thing? Or how do we be creative to make the next thing happen and engage my team at my place of employment or my organization? Well, in John Maxwell's book, Developing the Leader Within You 2.0, he teaches that the quickest way to gain leadership is problem solving. And if you don't have this book, you need to get it now and you need to dive into it, because there's not a chapter in this book that does not apply to the times that we're living in as leaders today. In chapter 5, John shares a quote from Scott Peck, who wrote the book, The Road Less Traveled. And I love this quote. He says, once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life is no longer difficult. Because once it's been accepted, the fact that life is difficult no longer matters. Now, as a young leader, I thought problems were to be avoided. In fact, I thought they were to be avoided at all cost, and that if I had them, it was my fault. It wasn't until I was well into my career that I truly began to understand and think differently about problems. In fact, I was at an event hosted by John Maxwell a few years ago, and I was having lunch with John and a group of what I thought were businessmen dressed in suits at my table. And one of them, sitting next to me, leaned over and he said, "Hey, listen, if we all get up suddenly and exit the table, don't take it personal. We're all special forces. And if we get the call, we're gone." And then he looked me in the eye and he said, "We don't get surprised by obstacles. We expect them. We don't get surprised by obstacles. We expect them." And in that moment, it changed my perspective on problems because it changed my awareness. Problems introduce us to ourselves. As I said, problems to me as a young leader, I felt were an indication of how well I was performing. And if they appeared, it was my fault. Or if I talked about them, it was a bad thing. And what I came to realize over time was that our plates as leaders will always be filled with problems. And expecting anything less than that is really being unrealistic. So once I accepted that reality, it really took a lot of pressure off of me as a leader and actually helped me face problems head on. And it creates a sense of relief when we go from agonizing to accepting. Now just think about that. Agonizing to accepting. The other thing that does is it creates an awareness that there's always an answer for the problems that I'm going to face. And that, believe me, that is an asset. So I'm going to share 5 of the 8 things that John lays out for us. He outlines for us as leaders in chapter 5 of Developing the Leader Within You 2.0 to help us see problems that we face as opportunities. Now, you'll have to get the book and read the chapter to get the rest. Albert Einstein said, "In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity." What opportunities do you see lying in the middle of difficulty that you're facing right now? Number 1, John says, recognize a potential problem before it becomes a real problem. In fact, he says, real great leaders are seldom blindsided. What potential problem, I want you to think about this. What potential problem do you see in your world right now? And what's your game plan to fix them or to fix it when it happens? Recognize a potential problem before it becomes a real problem. Number 2, he says, get a clear picture of the problem. There's a saying, you may have heard it, that assumption is the mother of all mess ups. In this chapter, he quotes author Max Dupree, who said the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. In times of difficulty, we may not have certainty, but it's our responsibility to define reality today. If you're not clear on the problems that you're facing, you will be unclear on the right solution. As an example, if you're performing below expectations in whatever field you happen to be today, you may be knocking it out of the park in your field. If you don't have a clear picture of the situation, what's at the root cause, what's influencing that problem or that success, you can't solve problems and make progress taking the appropriate steps forward to reduce the trend or reverse the trend. So get a clear picture of the problem. Number 3, he said, ask questions to help you solve problems. He says asking questions helps us gather information and seek solutions. And they also enable us to understand what people are thinking and feeling outside of just how we're thinking and feeling. And here's just a couple of problem-solving questions that we should be asking when we face our problems. It's, who knows the most about the problem? I think as leaders, we often think we need to know or we should know the most about the problems when, quite frankly, John says the ones closest to the action know more about the problems than we'll ever know. Who needs to know what I know? Maybe there's things I know that others don't know. Who is that? And who wants to tackle the problem? As a young leader, I thought it was my responsibility to take care of all the problems, when in reality, the more I can equip others to work through problems, the more influence I have as a leader. So number one, recognize a potential problem before it becomes a real problem. Get a clear picture of the problem. Number three, ask questions to help you solve problems. And number four, that I think is probably the most important today, is value shared problem solving. The best problem solvers don't work alone. For years, I blew it as a leader because I thought I had to solve all the problems or I wasn't worthy of the role that I was in. What I've come to realize that I can make some good decisions on my own, but I can make more of the right ones when I bring other people into the process. In fact, John has a 10-80-10 process for solving problems. He says the first 10% is me defining the problem for the team, but 80% of it is listening to the ideas of those on the team and really leaning in. And then that last 10% is me adding my value from my experience. So it's not all about me. So who do you need to bring into your inner circle right now to help you solve a problem that you're facing today? I want you to write their name down. And I challenge you before this day is over to make the call, send the email, send the text, the I am, whatever you need to do to help you solve that problem. And number five, John says, always come up with more than one solution. You know, with the magnitude of problems that we're faced with every day, I can have the tendency to find one answer and then champion that solution. John Maxwell says, seldom is there just one way to solve a problem. And he said, the more options, the better, because the problems continually shift and change. And he said, when we look for many solutions, the best one will actually champion itself. So recognize a potential problem before it becomes a real problem. Get a clear picture of the problem. Ask questions to help you solve the problems you're facing. Get other people involved. Value shared problem solving and always work to come up with more than one solution. Okay, back to the special forces guys that were sitting at my table with John Maxwell. Well, they didn't get the call that day while I was with them, but I was attending the same event last year when Chris Hogan was one of the speakers. And during his session, he told a story about meeting with a group of special forces soldiers while he was with them. And he asked them about the flag on their shoulder. And I don't know if you've seen their uniform, but the flag on their shoulder faces forward. And he was curious about that. So he said, I asked one of them about that. He said, why does the flag face forward on your shoulder? And he said, the soldier looked him in the eye and he said, it's that way because we run to the battle, not from it. We run to the battle, not from it. As leaders, we should be running to our problems, not from them. The quickest way to gain influence as a leader is to problem solve. We should be running to our problems and engaging those around us to help us truly run to and run through those problems. My best to you. Thank you for having me.
Wow, Tim. Excellent, guys. Let's give it up for Tim. Wow, you said not only do we run to the battle, you said we run through the battle. Wow, wonderful job. All right, Tim, thank you so much.
Thank
Stay with
you.
you in the queue. I'll bring you back at the very end. Guys, go ahead in the chat box. I want you to put what was the one primary thought that you are going to take and take action with it. And I wanted to show Tim in the audience, I've got that book right here. This is the book, Developing the Leader Within You 2.0 by our combined and shared mentor, Papa John, we call him on the team, Dr. John C. Maxwell. Run out, buy that book today because it's going to bless your life. Well, we're going to give you a short segment of a commercial on my Transformation Tuesday podcast on my YouTube channel. Then I will be the next voice that you hear. See you soon. Hello, family. This is your friend Kenesha, and welcome to another episode of Transformation Tuesday. We are in trying times. We are in hellish times. So we have to make a decision to be happy, to transform our own lives. So how do we do that? Eliminate negative people. I can tell you, there's some calls I do not pick up. There's some texts I do not return. There's some people when I'm in Stature Brothers and I see them coming down the aisle and I can tell who you are. Even with your mask on, I turn, I go down another aisle. Now I'm joking, just a little. Eliminate negative people from your life. It's not that we don't like them, but we don't have time for foolishness. Another way to make sure that we can stay happy in hellish times is we want to eliminate negative intake. Watch what you're bringing into your mind, your eye gates. Sometimes turn off the news. Turn that television off and read a book. Sometimes, family, we have to get off of social media. Eliminate anything that's negative that you're intaking. And then here's what we want to do. Illuminate your mind. Feed your mind with positivity. Feed your mind, if you're a believer, with the word of God. Something that's going to sustain you. So our final thought and our probing question. Who or what will you eliminate in order to protect your happiness? We're in trying times, and I'm not quite sure when things will change. But hellish or not, I choose to be happy. Hey, this is your friend Kenesha. I love you. Have a good day. So I can remember it like it was yesterday. I just had an excellent time. I was in Texas with several people that I loved at a wonderful conference. It was a Sunday night. We were on our way back to California the next day. And I was in my bed and my phone rang. And my friend called. She said, Kenesha, are you up? I said, of course not. It's midnight. I'm asleep. And then she said, I want you to brace yourself. She said, the pictures were posted. Is it true? And all I could do was weep. Because it was true. And at that moment, the disaster that I thought I hid struck. And not only did it strike, my whole life was disrupted. I knew that I was going to lose everything because you see, as my friend said before, disaster is going to happen. But these were multiplied disasters. And even worse, they were disasters that I brought on my own life. You heard my friend earlier, Mike, he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. I wasn't. I walked into this eyes wide open. So what do you do when the breath literally feels like it has left your body? What do you do in that moment? What do you do when you have to face people who you love, admire, respect, and you know that what they have entrusted you with, you have made decisions, multiplied decisions that will cause you to lose it. And not only lose it, because of my disaster, I was tarnishing someone else's name and they had nothing to do with it. How do you get on a plane the next day when everyone around you is laughing and talking and they notice something is noticeably different? How do you go and face those people? And they ask you, is it true? And when you're filled with words, like I always am, I could respond and say nothing. What do you do when you have to publicly stand and face people? You see, some disasters are private, but some are very public. How do you pivot when you've had a moral disaster and you're a leader? What do? Well, I'll tell you what I did. I remember being right in the other room on my bed. Now, those of you who know me, I'm a very positive person. So you're probably like, what's going on with her? I just want to show you what disaster can do. Sat on my bed, and with the largest knife I could find in my house, I sat on the edge of the bed, and it was about to be over. That's what disaster can do if we allow it. It can bring you to the edge. And for me, this was literal, not figuratively. And those of you who know me, I'm a pretty strong girl, right? Takes a lot to get me down. But this was, in my mind, my end. In fact, out of my mouth, I told my friend, I said, this is the end of me. Oh yeah, Dr. Kenesha. I said, this is the end of me. I'm tapped out. I cannot come back from this. So I sat on the bed. Now, I don't like pain. So obviously we know I didn't do it because I'm here with you today. So that's the good news. But the reality is this was serious. Just like the times we're in right now. COVID-19, racial stupidity that's happening in our world. Political unrest, election year, all of those. So you may say, Kenesha, how in the world, with that type of intro story, how in the world did you come back? I'm going to tell you 3 principles. The very first thing is I had to just embrace reality. Kenesha, you did it. You did it. Face it. So we're in COVID-19. We have to face it, family. Embrace the reality that we may have to go back into quarantine. Because oftentimes, I'll tell you what we like to do. At least it's just me. I won't say you. We like to ignore. I wanted to ignore and pretend. I wanted to be in disbelief that the people did not know that this had happened. They did know. They saw, they heard, they guessed, they rumored, they gossiped, all of it. Sometimes we pretend. Here's the problem with pretending when disaster strikes. I had done that before. Time after time after time. So if we pretend, the unfortunate part of it is it's going to come back again, but manifest maybe a bit differently. So we're going to have to embrace, family, whatever disaster. My friend Tina said, either we're in it, we're going in, or we just came out. Life is hard. Disaster strikes. So if we can embrace the reality of where we are, That is going to be our very first step. Let me tell you this one. We may sit here for the next few minutes. This one is called employ right thinking. We know that to employ is like to give a job to, right? So if I employ right thinking, why do I do that? I want to read you a quote. This is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It says this: life consists of what a man is thinking about all day. Life consists not about degrees. Life doesn't consist of how many figures we have. It doesn't consist on if we have the corner office. It says life consists of what Kenesha is thinking between these two ears all day long. So why did I get into the disaster I was in? It's because of what I was thinking about. How did I get out of the disaster that I was in and have the opportunity to be before you here today? It's because what I started to think about. And here's the good news. We can choose to pivot in every disaster. It's our choice if we employ right thinking. Here's another quote. This one is by John Locke. It says this: I have always thought the actions of men that they were the best interpreters of their thought. So you see, I don't need a peek into your brain. I don't need to eavesdrop on your conversations. All I have to do is watch you move, because your movement is, the fruit of what the root is, which is between our two ears. So if we employ right thinking, that is what gets us out of our disaster. Now you may say, listen, Miss Kenesha, I was with you until then. I've been thinking several right thoughts, and we're still in COVID-19. Here's the secret. The disaster may be still happening around you, but it doesn't have to happen in you. That's what right thinking does. It's about making sure that within your world, your realm of influence, that we make sure that we employ that right thinking. And then here is our last quote. This is by James Allen, and it says, you are today where your thoughts have brought you. You will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you. So as I sat on that bed and I did not make the decision, I'm a believer too, like several of my friends here, I could hear in my ear, will you let me help you? And will you let me help you by you changing your thinking? So if we can employ right thinking, family, it can pull us out of this disaster. And let me tell you a couple of other steps. It says, choose to control your what? We already talked about thinking, but choose to control the thoughts that come. Here's a principle called metacognition. That is to think about what you're thinking about. How often have you thought a thought, it hit your heart, and then you start feeling terrible? I challenge you, when you have those negative thoughts, I want you to trace them. Right now in COVID-19, on many of our jobs, we have something called contact tracing. Why? Because they want to know if someone tests positive for COVID-19, they want to be able to trace, when did they come? Where did they go? Who were they with at what times? So if we can employ contact tracing on our thoughts, think about what we're thinking about, metacognition, trace back if you get negative thoughts. What is it connected to? If you're having negative actions because disaster struck, disaster did not make us do anything. We choose. So if we can choose the right thinking, then we can choose our right actions. And then my third step is enjoy the ride. I know that's not profound. I know it's simple, but family and friends enjoy the ride. Why? Because we're in this life and we know we're going to have ups and downs. We're going to have waves. There's a story that I tell. I was with a group of friends a couple of years ago. We were in Mexico. We went out into the deep blue sea. Don't listen to what my friends say. They'll tell you it's a small pond. It's not the truth. It was in the middle of the deep blue sea where we were on our wave runners and I almost died. The waves rose. They swept over me, almost knocked me off. This is all the truth. No embellishment. I could not even enjoy the ride because I was so afraid For me, what was that impending disaster? While my friends rolled by, waved, called me losers, and sped off, right? They implemented the strategy of enjoy the ride. We know the waves are here, Kenesha. We know they knocked your glasses off. We're in a pond. But in my mind, we were in the deep blue sea. And I don't mean to make light, because I know what we're going through is serious. But part of pivoting in disaster is being able to be jovial, enjoy, lean into you, focusing on you, reading. How can you add value to yourself? Are you up on the Netflix series? Can you give me all of the episodes and fill in the blank? What's happening with the series of growth in your mind? I challenge you, I charge you. Enjoy the ride, lean into yourself, invest in yourself. I also say focus on others. That's the lean out. Know others. When we sometimes are self-absorbed, then it's woe is me. But when we can look up and outside of ourselves and add value to others, like all of my friends here you saw today, these are people that add value. I add value to others because I care. And then it gets my attention off of the disaster and it gets it onto somebody else. And then here myself and the other person is going through that disaster together. And then the third thought under that, enjoying the ride, is focus on the future. Lean forward into your destiny. At the end of the day, we are going to make it out of COVID-19. How do I know? I don't think any of us were alive when the influenza first happened. I just got my influenza shot yesterday, right here. They made it out, such to the point where there's hardly any concern. We get the shot and we keep it pushing. So let's lean forward into our future, because there is a new day. But don't wait on the new day. Don't wait for quarantine to be lifted. Pivot now. And I'll tell you this, family, because I decided not to go through with the slice. And I mean, this is so real to me, because most people would not have known that. Not you, Dr. Kenesha. Oh, yes, me. It's like my friend Tina said, you see bios, you see the outside, but you have no idea sometimes the story behind the face. And because I pivoted in that disaster, you see me doing what you see me doing now. And this is just the beginning. How about you? I need you. I need your gift. I need your talent. I need your focus. For the very purpose that you've been created, I need that. I need you to pivot so you can continue to get to your destiny. I encourage you to embrace the reality. We're in quarantine. Embrace that. Employ positive thinking. You have a choice. I have a choice. And we're going to enjoy the ride. We're going to laugh when all we want to do is cry. We're going to get up when we want to stay down. We're going to go forward when all we want to do is turn around and run backwards. We're going to enjoy this ride because we're in it together. Why am I passionate about transformation? Because after that experience, and this was 2016, not years and years ago. You want to know what my first doctorate is in? Dr. Dope Fiend. They should call me Dr. Dope Fiend because I've made so many dumb moves. But the good news is I win because I know how to pivot when disaster strikes. Hey, family, in that chat box right now, I want you to put down, what is one primary thought that you remember? I'm going to go ahead and play a commercial. And then when we come back, we're going to have our entire panel. If you have any questions, anything that you want to ask us, drop it in the chat box. We're going to come on with you for just a few minutes to answer some questions. I hope that you guys are enjoying your time. Let's go ahead and lean in to another episode of TransFormation Thursdays. Hello, family. This is your friend Kenesha, and welcome to another episode of TransFormation Thursday. So our thought again is get the hell out of here. Now, we are in a pandemic, racial crises. We are in political unrest, so many things that are happening. So there's hell or hellish things happening all around us. But how as influencers and leaders, we can protect people from this place that can be hellish or filled with criticism or critical types. Here's one. Get hell out of individuals. Pour into people. Show people that there's a better way. Be positive with other people. And when those people on your teams and your influence refuse to accept that, then sometimes you just give your attention to other individuals. Here's another step. Get hell out of groups. Yes, I said it. No more hell, no more drama, no more mess in your families, on your teams, in your organizations. Influence people in a positive, but in a healthy environment. And then get hell out of the atmosphere. Listen, influencers, you are responsible for the tonality of your teams, of your families. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So if there's hell in the atmosphere, leaders and leadership, I'm looking at you and you should be looking at me. So here's our final probing question. How do you plan to get the hell out of the environment that you have influence in? We want peace. We want positivity. But leaders, we have to be intentional to get that. Hey, this is your friend Kenesha. I love you. Have a wonderful and awesome day. All right, welcome back. Welcome back, Mike, Tina, Kim. Just any thoughts that you guys have. I mean, I am on cloud 15. I'm not sure that there's a cloud 15, but I feel like if there is, I'm on it. Any thoughts that you guys want to share before we jump into our questions and answers?
Just so good. I mean, just hearing all the speakers and all the takeaways and reading all the comments. I mean, it's just great. You know, from Tina talking about the pivot from the basketball, keep your foot planted, and just is this Tim just sharing as this wisdom. So, you know what? It's great.
Good. Thanks, Mike.
Yes, I agree. Everybody was so amazing. Like I felt like I was at IMC, you know. For those of you IMC is when all of these wonderful, authentic individuals who are John Maxwell certified, who want to add value to other people and to see transformational change in the world all come together. So just me saying that, you can only imagine what the experience is like. So this was absolutely incredible. I mean, I was snapping and writing and high-fiving myself while you all were talking. Just, I'm at that 30,000 foot view that we're talking about right now. So.
Yeah, I would jump on the bandwagon here. I learned more from the group that was speaking today than probably I expected to. It was just such a value add. And thank you, Kenesha. What a wonderful job you did with this today. And those that are commenting, I mean, thank you so much for your sweet comments. What a blessing to us as speakers.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. Just first class. So we're going to jump into our very first question. So it says, this disaster has siphoned, guys, we know this, the gas right from our tanks, right? And some of us are riding on fumes. We are on empty and barely going down the road. So what are some techniques that you would suggest in order to re-energize and refocus us to a healthy place mentally, physically, and spiritually? Anybody can jump in on that question.
I'll go first. I'll take it. I think more than anything else, you say, I think we said physically, mentally, and spiritually. From a mentally standpoint, just know where you're at, right? Always talk about the power of awareness, and that's chapter 2 out of John Maxwell's book. From a physical standpoint, exercise, right? Don't be afraid to ask for help, right? Because we also know when the disaster strikes and things happen, sometimes we want to feel like we're all alone and we want to go inward, but there's a whole lot of people out there so willing to help if we just raise our hand and say, hey, I need help. And from a spiritual standpoint, it's all about face your fears and activate your faith, right? I think I said at one time before, activate your faith when disaster happens. Whatever your faith is, activate that and it's push down your fears and watch things happen.
Excellent. Maybe one other of you guys can lean in on that question too. I think it's a heavy one.
Yeah, so I'll just put a plus sign after what Mike just said and say, I believe that I found it to be very important, again, who you surround yourselves with. The circle of influence is so very important. One, after identifying and acknowledging that, hey, I am struggling, like that's really key. And to be able to be in that space of vulnerability and then have people around you who you can be your authentic self around. And they can uplift, encourage, honestly, most of us, and probably if you're on here chatting, you would fall into this category because you're talking about personal and professional growth today. Most of the time we're always giving out, and we feel like we always have to be the strong ones and, appear as though we're not going through anything. So it's really, really important that we surround ourselves with people that we can be vulnerable with, who can pour into us, and they know at the end of the day, you're still that same Dr. Kanisha, you're still the same Tim, Mike, Tina, and whomever else, Lisa, Slack, and whoever else is on, you're still that same person. And that's super helpful. And I want to also just add really quickly that, it is important to have that, because what I find is that you can't do that same thing with everybody. There are some people that if I say my finger hurts, they will probably fall apart because they don't think my finger is supposed to hurt. But then there are other people who they're like, oh girl, your finger hurts. Here's that Band-Aid. Bandage it up again. You've had a hurt finger in the past. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off. So we have to be able to do that.
Yeah. I love that. And I want to just pile on here too, to what Tina and Mike said. One of the things that I'm learning as a leader is that I have to give myself permission to be okay with how I'm feeling. And it goes to where there's 3 things that really have stood out to me a lot through this last 9 months, is that I've got to give myself grace to feel anger, to feel fear, because for me, like many of you, maybe there's been physical loss in your family. Maybe you've had companies that you're within that have severely downsized in the last 9 months. And that, I've been giving myself permission to grieve through some of that stuff. So for me, one of the questions I've been asking myself is, what am I feeling right now? And being okay with what I'm feeling, and then giving myself permission to fail. Because, I think oftentimes we think, hey, we can't fail. Well, yeah, I want to be positive in everything, but I also want to understand that I'm not going to let perfect get in the way of being better. And then even in this season of difficulty, giving myself permission to enjoy, right? Giving myself permission to enjoy some of the things that this season has brought, right? Even right now, going into the next 2 weeks. Some of us are going to be alone for the holidays, but finding something I can enjoy in that and really leaning into that. So, man, great thoughts here.
Yeah, really good. And I liked, Tim, when you said it's okay to fail. So this year, I read Dr. Papa John's book, Failing Forward, and man, it did something for me. Because as we know, he always says what? Everything worthwhile, it's uphill. And if you can get to a dream in 2 seconds, I'm not sure that that's a dream, right? So when we look at this notion of failure, I've embraced failure is my friend. If I know that everything worthwhile is uphill, I look failure in the face and say, come here, sit it down next to me, because you and I are going to be great friends. We're in multiplied disasters, multiplied pandemic, multiplied crises. I'm not sure that that's a word, but we're going to go with it for right now, right? And I tell failure, come here, sit down, because if I'm going to make it uphill, then we're going to have to be friends. Because nobody successful gets to the top of the hill. Why do we think soldiers wear boots when they're taking the hill?
Come on.
They're not going to the beach, they're going on a road march.
Yep.
So it's okay to fail forward and make failure your friend. And I think when we can stare it in the eye, it goes back to that point of embracing reality. When I can stare failure in the eye and say, come and sit down, because now I'm going to now employ the right thinking and change how I view it, then I'm definitely going to get out of this disaster to the next spot, because I know failure comes with success. You cannot separate them.
That's right.
All right, let's go to our next question, guys. Next question.
Good.
So this one is still in the leaning into myself. So in the book, No Limits, I'm teaching a mastermind on that this month. And we are having a good time talking about blowing the lid off of our capacity. Dr. John Maxwell, Papa John, states that successful people think differently than unsuccessful people. It goes on to summarize Paul the Apostle by saying, we can, not we might, not if COVID-19 happens. It says we can change the way we think. Now, do these principles still apply in the midst of COVID-19, Rona, some people, Rona, and racial crises, and this radical foolishness that's happening with political parties fighting each other? Does that principle still apply? Can we change our thinking when disaster strikes? Because we've got three at one time. Maybe that would have happened with only one.
I think it does. And I rely on a quote that I heard Zig Ziglar say a long time ago, is that success comes in a can, not in a can't. And it's like, hey, and I'm an older guy, Popeye, right? It's like, hold it, dude. I can always pull that can out and overcome everything with that can of spinach. So I just lean in and go, I can accomplish more, because success comes in a can than in a can't, right? And that in itself gives you the drive to, as John said, it's uphill, but it's uphill all the way.
Yes.
That's good.
Good. Anybody else lean into that?
Yeah, so I agree. I believe that we can change the way we think, even when disaster strikes. What just popped in my mind, I'm just say it like I thought about it, was, the battlefield of the mind.
Yes.
And we when we acknowledge, that's where it starts. Like, if I can get my thoughts right, oh my God, like, then the battle is not even half. It's like I'm 99% there, if I could just get my thinking straight. And I can answer this question best just by saying, I know it's true, because I've been there, right? Like, I know it's true, because as I think about the disasters, I think about the mind shift that I had to have. And so as my grandmother used to say, it's better felt than telt, or I'm not just telling you what I heard. I'm telling you what I know. Like, I have to go back to the old sayings on this one, because that's just true. It's like, I can give you text and all the academia that you might want, but the reality is, I know this is true.
Yes.
Because I've experienced it in my own life multiple times.
Yes. Good. Mike, what do you lean into that first too, Mike?
Oh, good.
Yeah, just listen to what Tim and Tina was just talking about. The answer for me is absolutely yes. And for the panel that's watching, when you talk about adversity and everything that's happening, sometimes the limiting beliefs that we have inside of our own head would tell us that we can't do anything, or it's over, we don't have any options. And you tell yourself that. Who told you that? Who told you that you can't do or change your current situation because of what's going on around you. You know, we can't. Sometimes we can't control the outcome, but we can control the way we think, right? So if we just change our thinking and realize who we are and whose we are, you know, you think about that for a second. We can control that. And there's a couple things. If we know our strengths, we understand our weakness, we understand our interests, and in that, there are some opportunities that lie if we understand the way we think. So absolutely, we can control that.
Excellent. And guys, this question to me, it's Tina, I like how you said, I'm not just giving you theory, right? I'm giving you, I have lived this.
Yes.
And what's interesting is before the experience that I shared earlier with me sitting on the edge of my bed, you know, getting ready to just take myself out because I was so hopeless. And for the people who know me, I'm never like that. Like Tim said, I never say no. Let's take the hill, man. Let's take the hill yesterday. What are you waiting on? That's just how I am. So for me to be in such a grim place, I had defeated myself in this mind here. I told myself it was over because I'd already gone through a divorce before, which was for me public embarrassment. You don't get divorced in the South. You just stay together. You just stay together. Folks can do whatever and you just stay. You know what I'm saying? And so that's how it was where I grew up. So you mean I have now the Scarlet D? And then years later, mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. Dr. Kenesha, Dr. Dopefeed or which one is it? Because we really can't tell. So I'm recycling thoughts of silliness for years in leadership, degrees, status, figures, all of that. But something was misfiring between these two ears. And there came a time where I had to make a decision to change what I was thinking because it was going to bring me to the grave. I mean, literally. And so, like Tina said, when I go through this process of transformation, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I focus on this contact tracing of my thought and trace it back, because my actions are only reflect what I think and I trace it back, this is why I'm behaving like this. This is why. And I connect the dots and I stay there. I call it putting pressure. So I'm a believer, right? You don't have to be, but I am. So I begin to wrap my thoughts with the word. I won't go too deep, but I begin to wrap them and wrap and wrap and wrap until my thoughts were aligned for me with positivity, but with the word. And then I begin to see things I tried to change, family, for years. I could not until I started to change what was happening up here. And I don't mean a degree. I mean the purity. I'm going to say something right now. It's not very educated. The butt naked truth of the matter.
It's the truth.
You want transparency? People know you work with me. I'm going to give you transparency because that's what we need. So change your thinking, change your life. It's possible. In the worst pandemic and the worst disaster, devastation, whatever it is, it's possible. All right, guys, we're going to move on to our next question because we just have about 17 minutes before our show concludes. So looking at now, focusing on others, leaning out to know others. So first question is, how have you been adding value to others to help them pivot during this pandemic? What have you done specifically, not just about us now, to add value to others? Go ahead, Mike.
Normally I wait, but I've when this all started happening, right? Everything started happening. I started to be a bridge. I wanted to be a bridge, right?
Yes.
And sometimes leaders go first, and sometimes we can see more. And I wanted to be a bridge. And I wanted conversations, so I started having conversations, right? Have those healthy conversations. But taking my leadership journey and what I know in the space, I've been helping businesses, helping them pivot because individual coaching businesses. And helping companies where everything's shut down. My business shut down, right? So I had to buy everything and go virtual. But other businesses felt like they couldn't do anything. But so helping them pivot and do virtual trainings so they can still scale and have an understanding what it looks like in this new normal that we have. So that's kind of what I've been doing, building a bridge, helping others communicate, And, hey, call me. I can definitely help you pivot and change and still have that income and that growth that you need to sustain.
Yeah, so I guess I'll follow Mike again because he tends to land right where I need to start. I've just, since July, I've been doing this thing called Bridge the Gap. So since he was talking about bridge, I'm like, yes. And so, I've been very intentional in adding value by bridging the gap. And what is the gap? Well, I help people to identify what that is, during this period. So just, being very intentional. And I've been very intentional to live into the core values that we have on our John Maxwell team, which we call our John Maxwell DNA, because it is in times of disaster, it's easy to look introspectively and say, what do I need? I need. But I've been very intentional to say, okay, how can I add value to other people, knowing that as I do that, I'm going to get what I need along the way. So, for me, practically, it's looked like, in my calendar, just about every day, there's someone who I don't benefit from anything, coaching them or training them and so forth. But there's somebody or some people every day who are in my calendar that I just want to just spend time and add value and help them bridge those gaps.
Yeah.
Good, Tina. Tim, what about you?
So good. I heard Pat Lencioni say something several months ago. We were, I don't know, a month or so into the pandemic, and he said, people don't need your words right now. They need your voice. They don't need your emails. They don't need your texts. They don't need your IMs. They need to hear your voice. So I just started picking up the phone and calling prior clients, prior employees of clients. Some were laid off, some weren't, and just saying, how are you doing, really? And it's been amazing, the feedback and how it's led to genuine, sincere thanks for having someone to lean into that took the initiative. So for me, I've probably done more reaching out, more mentoring sessions with people that were prior clients or potential clients than ever, just from leaning in and speaking to them versus just sending them words.
Good, guys. Wonderful. I'll tell you for myself this year, it's been a pretty phenomenal year. And I'll just, again, be transparent. Before, I was all about my own success. And I wanted other people to have success. And if you did it, you do you, boo, because I'm going to get mine. That's how I was before. This year for me has been very pivotal. When Papa John talks about this notion of going from success to significance. And when I ran into this notion this year, like the fabric of my heart has changed just in this COVID-19, where not just am I interested in my own success, but now I authentically am trying to bring anybody in my realm of influence. If you listen, I will talk. You know it. You give me time, I will talk. Tim just told us, don't text, they need your voice. So I'll give you voice if you come, right? I'm pulling everyone, cats, dogs, neighborhood ants. If you come over, I've got something to say, right? So this year in particular, I jumped on, and again, we're all on the John Maxwell team, these masterminds. And just from January 7th, 2020 was my first one. And every month, this month, I am teaching No Limits. Check this out. I've taught every mastermind that there is in all 3 sections of the John Maxwell team after I finish this month. There are no other masterminds I could teach, and some of them multiple times. And I don't say that for why people think I'm saying that. I say that because of the value and the lives that are changed. I am seeing, family, businesses being released for people who have been under this content. I'm seeing ministries being released. I'm seeing people who were in the shell. I've known you for 20 years. I thought you were mute. I'm not being offensive. I didn't even know you had a voice. And you're coming out. This is what adding value does. It brings people, my pastor says, bringing people from their desert to their destiny. And I am seeing that when it's not just my own success, going to this place of significance, not only is my life changing, the people around me. And for me, that's what gives me pure joy, is this significance. Papa John said in one of his books, he said, what is going to be the epitaph when we transition? Is it going to be all about you, essentially, or what are they going to say? And for whatever reason, man, that was a pinch in my heart, because there would have been lots of lineage about Kenesha. But what was I doing intentionally, consistently for others? Because again, I was like, okay, I'll help you, but if you don't want it, go for it. Now I am going after people and challenging and leaning in and encouraging and speaking life. Guess what? Do you really want to know the reason why? Because somebody did that to me right when I was ready to end it.
So good.
So I was somebody's, I won't name them, but I wouldn't be here right now had people not added value to me. If they had not understood, because honestly, guys, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I had messed up so much repeatedly. It should have been thrown away. There should not have been a restoration of position ever. Yes, friendship, but not position. And I have it all back. And not because I'm any great wonder. It's because of transformation, because people added value. Even in the blackest of disaster, in the blackest of the black of my life, someone looked at me and they saw past that. That's why I'm on fire, because like Tina said, I'm living this. I'm proof of what significance is, because other people knew this principle before me. We're going to go to one last question, family. Then it'll be time for us to end. We're going to go down to we're focusing on the future. We're going to enjoy this ride of life. We're going to pivot and enjoy it. So leaning forward, what is your relationship with fear? We're in several different pandemics, as I've said, and they are pretty scary. I mean, let's be honest. What's your relationship with fear? I'm going to ask Tina, start this one for us, Tina, and then Tim, then Mike.
Yes, so that's a very interesting question. I think that's the first that I've gotten that question. I honestly, when I thought about it, as soon as you said it, my initial was to quote some scriptures about fear, right? Like that's the initial. And then I started thinking, like, all of that is right and it's embedded in me and it's how I'm walking, but I really thought back to my childhood, and my daughter is like this as well. I remember like doing things, and my grandmother would say, "You're fearless. You're fearless." And so I walked throughout life like that, like, "Oh, you're fearless." But what that did was I had to pause at a stage in life to say, well, am I really, am I really fearless? And really identify that there are some things, and life will bring some things to me that makes me stop right in my tracks. And fear will present its ugly head. And I have at that moment a choice to make on how I respond. Now that's been my journey with this fear thing. So that's my relationship with fear, is that I'm coming to like being true to walking in truth and being true to who I am, and acknowledging if something is making me fearful, but quickly having that mindset shift that we talked about to decide how I'm going to respond to it.
That's good.
And then my response is, and I can start to name, what my response to that is. And that's the scriptures that I'm quoting and reminding myself, of who I am and who's on the inside of me. And that's why I'm able to walk in and not walk in fear.
Good, Tina, good.
Man, that's good. That's really good. For me, almost 3 years ago, I stepped out of a 38-year career and started from scratch a full-time consulting business teaching the Maxwell methods. And that in itself brought a lot of initial fear. And what I learned from the mentors that were close by me was to recognize it for what it is and to acknowledge it. And as John Maxwell said, the biggest gap we have is between what we know and what we do. Oftentimes we don't do something that we're fearful of. And what I'm learning is that if I take action, it forces me to face that fear and typically break through it. So I can just tell you right now that I expect fear in just about everything that I'm doing. And in that itself, it just says to me consciously that, okay, I recognize it for what it is. I'm going to be able to get through it by taking action. The longer I hold off on taking action, the more fear, the more emotional it gets. So for me, it's being able to recognize it and say, okay, here's what it is. It means I need to act. I need to move forward with something to break through that.
Good, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah, that's so good. One of the things, if ones that don't know, I've got no fear tattooed on my chest because I had none. I had none, but I had to realize that fear is real and it comes in many forms. But it's up to me to how I identify that fear that's trying to penetrate, and what I'm gonna do with that supposed false evidence appearing real. Because at this time, there's a lot of fear around what's happening right now. And for me, I understand that. How will I respond to that? Will I lean into my faith, or will I rise my fear above that? So there's a lot of things that I am able to control, but one thing I can't control is how I respond. And one thing I'll never allow is fear to direct my path on where I'm going, because I realize how fear will allow me to respond and go to a negative place subconsciously that I really shouldn't go. And you sit with your thoughts of fear, there's a lot of other things that may come up that's not even real.
Yeah.
And you start asking yourself, Mike, who told you you couldn't do that? Who told you you wasn't good enough? Who told you that you couldn't overcome everything that you can? False evidence appearing real, right? Fear. But we also got to recognize what's truth, right? So for me, I have a relationship to the point where I can control what I can't control, move forward, like Tina said, lean on the scriptures for me and man of faith. But I also understand that I feed into my faith and suppress my fear, walk into the integrity that, you know what, let's go, let's move into action. Let's make some things happen. What can I control, right? Because it was fearful when I was, to be honest, when I was going to a place where I was going out speaking and coaching and adding value, and it shut down. So what do you do next? You start buying all the lights. You start buying the microphones. You start moving into action and helping other people do the same. So control what we can't control, add value, feed your faith, and suppress your fear. Thank you.
Excellent, guys. And then we just have a few minutes left, about 2 or 3 minutes left. And I'm just going to say about fear, it comes. Once, like what Tina said, once I embrace the fact that it's going to come, just like failure, all right, I listen, you and I, we know each other. We know each other. And then I keep it pushing. But I think when we get surprised that it comes, or we pretend, right, that it doesn't, that's where we get into trouble. The moment we can face whatever the disaster is in the mirror and pivot from that, that's where we have our victory. Guys, oh my gosh, this has been an excellent first transformation experience. Here's what I would love to do. Tim, Tina, Michael, go ahead and put your information in the chat box now. In case anybody that's watching, they want to book you. They're all speakers. This is what they do professionally. They are wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and drop my information in the contact or in the box as well. If you're interested, guys, thank you so much to the audience. So Pam, I'm going to put you in the queue. Please don't leave because I'll come there in just a second. Thank you so much. I'll see you, Pam, in the queue in just a moment. So family, thank you all for tuning in again to Transformation Experience 2020. I hope, I pray that this experience has added value to you. This is only the first of many that will be to come. So go out, do something different, right? Think differently, but be the change in this world. Transform you. And look at my mom. My mom says, a phenomenal experience today. Thanks, Mom. Love you. You're the reason why I'm here. Go, Mom. Again, join my TFN Facebook page at TransFormation 411. Join me, my YouTube page. What do? I live to give for the rest of my life. I know why I've been born now. And I'll leave you with this final quote. There are two important days: the day that a person is born and the day that they find out why. And I found out why. It's to add value and to be a pusher of hope. Go out there. Remember, I need you to pivot so you can reach your dream. Thank you so much for tuning in. Guys, God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your day.